Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. An international week in concussion be damned, it's another Q&A pod. So welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name's David Edgar. I am your host, and this week I am literally your guest because during International Week, after we've all recovered from the excitement of the match the night before, that we then, as you know, it's becoming traditional now, you guys write in with quick write-in. Christ, and get a blue Peter badge. You guys send in through the wonders of social media questions to me, and I'll do my very best to answer as many of them as possible. We've had a fantastic response. The response seems to be growing, and I kind of thought that the more of these that we did, the less questions there would be because I'd answered them, but apparently not. And credit to you for several innovative questions. I wish there was quite this much artistry on the pitch at times, and you never fail to impress me. Now, I've noticed on a few podcasts that I listen to because I'm not just a content provider, but I also love podcasts myself. That's why I wanted to get into it in the first place. And I've noticed that there's a thing for people who are on podcasts, especially established podcasts, and without being arrogant, I like to think that's what we are now, that they sometimes kind of moan a little bit, and obviously that's not something I would want to do on this pod and take up your time. But on top of the concussion that I spoke about earlier this week, I now also have a frigging cold, so if my responses are somewhat short-tempered to any of these questions, then you'll know why, but bear with me, I'm doing my best. And you know these things in films, you see the guy go, I don't want your sympathy. I do want your sympathy, so please send it. Also gifts, anything along those lines. But enough about that. Let's crack on with the show. First question comes to us from Shota Disco Shoes on Twitter. Although he's got Shota's Disco Shoes, which is correct, but in his handle, Shota, you've only got Shota Disco Shoes. That make a lot of sense. Just saying. What was the club's thinking behind the aggressive cost-cutting of 03-04 and 05-06? Was it purely financial, or did Bain think the signings were of sufficient quality? What was the full extent of Murray's asset stripping, and what was the biggest genuine signing we missed out on? Okay, one at a time. The aggressive cost-cutting of 03-04 and then 05-06, was it purely financial? Yes, it was. Murray knew for years what was going to happen to Rangers, and I know he likes to peddle this myth that 2008 it became clear that after the financial crisis and the property thing that we were in trouble, that he knew 2002 when he first stepped away from the club. The reason that it happened in the 2 summers that you mentioned was because we'd been successful the year before, and the board figured that they couldn't really cost cut or cut the squad down in a period where we hadn't won anything, but when we had trophies in the cabinet, they felt they could kind of get away with it. I should point out that when I say that he knew it was coming, I don't think he knew that obviously the extent and the scale of what happened to us would happen to us. I don't think any of us believed that until about, I used to warn against it from about 2009 when it hit me that this could happen, but it was a long journey even for me as a sort of cynic and other people in the trust to get there. It was a long journey, but then we realised the scale of what could happen. But Murray had never really believed. So even as far back as 2002, he knew that we legitimately couldn't trade out of an 80 million debt with the money that was in Scottish football and the way that it was going, and also remain competitive. That was the thing. I mean, he could have cut us right to the bone and we'd finished, 4th every year, but he didn't want to do that, and politically couldn't, and his own ego wouldn't allow us to do that. But he was aware that the circumstances were that Rangers were in a hugely dangerous fiscal position. So the reason that there were these massive cost-cutting sprees was exactly that we'd had successful seasons the seasons before, obviously with the treble, and then in fact both helicopter Sundays, that they felt that the high was such that they could do it then, and then if we had a bad season, well, okay, but it was following on from a very memorable season, and that was the reasoning behind it. And Murray being an inveterate gambler, he although I say, he kind of knew what was coming. He knew on one level, but we all have the ability for doublethink in our lives. It's part of football, it's part of faith. It's logic tells you one thing, but your heart tells you another. He thought, all it would take would be one good run. All it would take would be, that's him. He's saying that, sorry, if this gets cut short, that's Murray has heard that I'm talking about him. They're gone now, I've slipped them. But he felt, one star player coming through, or a batch of signings that could be sold on at probably something would fall for him. And that was the way Murray ran his business, and it was successful for many years when he had the financial backing from at the time HBOS, or Bank of Scotland originally, then HBOS. And he felt that if he could just keep it going long enough, something would happen, that it would turn. And of course, very rarely does that happen. And it's a classic gambler's trick of, my luck will turn and I only need one good hand and it'll change everything around. And of course, very, 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 very rarely does life work out like that. Did Bain think the signings were of sufficient quality? No, he didn't. Privately, he would admit that. He thought that they were as good as could have been achieved on the budget that was available. And that led to problems with Paul Le Guen, for example. One of the reasons that Le Guen was basically wanting out from about day 12 was a budget was promised to him and not delivered. And put it like this, when he arrived to take charge of Rangers and try and revamp the club, Paul Le Guen didn't expect to be bringing in 3 players from Austria Vienna, copyright Ian Crocker. He really didn't think that was the level he'd be operating at. He didn't think he'd be out buying £10 million players either, but the budget was significantly less. And it is always interesting to see, on some levels, I think that the way that it panned out, he was always doomed to fail because, as I say, things like the budget annoyed him. And he underrated Scottish football, Paul Le Guen, than the culture at the club at the time. But it would have been interesting had he been given the money that was then given to Walter in the January. And it was strange that it was found then, because Murray was in love with Le Guen when he got him. He was so proud of himself for delivering him, as he should have been, because it was a coup to get him. So I was always surprised then that he got him, went to all the trouble, because he really had to woo him, and he did. And he went to all the trouble of getting him and, persuading him and getting him in and delivering him. And, he was the cock of the walk, and everybody was pleased with him. The fans were over the moon with it. And then he gave him $3 million to spend on a team that desperately needed revamped, and I never really got that. And as for Big Eck, it's an interesting thing for his career. Had he gone south after that treble, after that 18 months, before his team was ripped up, his stock would never have been higher, and you wonder at what kind of job he could have wandered into down there, because having turned round Rangers on a budget, won 5 trophies at 5, completely turned it round against Celtic, you wonder what his stock would have been. But they sold his team out from under him. And one of Eck's problems, and it's continued throughout his career, is that Eck signs names rather than players. So Ostenstad's a great example of that. To Eck, an agent offers him Ostenstad, and Eck would go, "Oh, Egil Ostenstad, I remember him at Southampton." And he would often sign, and he still did, he did it in England as well, he would sign a player based on his name rather than what that player currently was. And of course there's a difference between signing an Egil Ostenstad when he's flying high at Southampton and an Egil Ostenstad 4 years later, after his confidence has been completely destroyed and he's lost all form and touch and has now become a bit of a journeyman. And obviously that particular team, the one that had him, had Nuno Capuccio, who of course had lodged an ex-memory from his performances against Celtic 3 years before, and Emerson, who again at that time you're looking at maybe 5 or 6 years after the impact he had at Middlesbrough. So I think the combination of things, Eck was happy enough because he was replacing these players with names, but he wasn't replacing them with commensurate ability. Because, on paper, if you look at their careers and you've got Neil McCann and Nuno Capuccio, you could argue you're making an upgrade with Nuno Capuccio, but not at that time. That wasn't the case. And obviously we saw that as that season progressed. What was the full extent of Murray's asset stripping? Well, basically, if it wasn't nailed down by the end of it, we didn't own it. And things like catering, things like the strips, because Rangers Retail under Nick Peel, when he was director, made a fortune. It really did, and we flogged it to Dave Whelan at JGB Sports for a decent amount. I mean, compared to what we were getting off Sports Direct, it was, you know, a lottery win. But it was because it was up front, and it basically, although we got all the money in one go, it then halved the amount of income that we had. And you can, if you sell a long-term income stream in one go, it's never a good sign, because you get the cash into the business, but then, you know, what do you do in the future when there's no money coming in, or very little money coming in? So things like that, the catering, I mean, that's shocking. Clubs should own that. It shouldn't be subcontracted out, you know. It should be, or at least it should be in partnership, and the clubs should be making a fortune from it. And anything that was that could be put into the Murray Empire, you know, call handling, etc., did go into the Murray Empire, and it's a nice myth that people have in their head, and sometimes I actually feel that I'm not sure I want to destroy it for them anymore, because they comfort themselves so much with the idea of the benevolent godfather David Murray. But he made more money at Rangers than he ever put in, and that is a fact. And the idea that the thing people refer to is, well, he put 50 million in, and no, he moved 50 million on paper in and around, and then later when it crashed, you know, no money came out of David Murray's bank account into Rangers. You know, it was a case of some financial engineering. It didn't lead anywhere. What was the biggest genuine signing we missed out on? The ones that spring to mind, I've mentioned before, obviously Joey Barton, that Murray was convinced he was signing, but just missed out for that paper. Now, before my time, and he told me this, so whether it is true or not, I can't say, but he told me that players that we missed out on was Eric Bakker, from Leeds United, who people will remember was part of that really good team that they had round about the turn of the century. Hakan Yakin, who's a Swiss international, very talented playmaker, who he brought over for a match. Actually, we got really turned over badly at Parkhead and played awfully, and they had him in the stand as a sort of sop, and then 3 days later the deal broke down, and I was never quite sure if it was a case of they brought him over just in case, and then, you know, well, that'll get me through the next few days. He was very good at managing things like that. But those were the kind of the main two. And he also mentioned from back in the 90s Tony Yeboah. We could have had Tony Yeboah before he went to Leeds United, so a couple of Leeds connections there. So they're the kind of biggest names that jump out at me. There were others, but those are the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. RFC 99, have you had any experience with King or other shareholders better than David Murray as owners, or do we need a new board? It's a tough one, because I haven't had a lot of experience with Dave King, and it was a while ago, a long time ago, so it was a brief interaction, so not really enough to form, and certainly not now, because people change. You know, I've changed dramatically over that 10-year period, so I don't think it would be fair to say that he absolutely hasn't. He's not a gambler the way Murray was, and the difference between the two of them, the main one, as I would say, is that David Murray wanted to be loved, and Dave King could not give a fuck about whether he's loved or not. So I would say that's probably the main difference between the two. They both have good intentions, so it's hard when you get people who, and you see it all over England at the moment, that you've got guys who are club owners and they could not care less about the club. You know, they'll give you a public face, but they're there to do a specific task, make money, or, you know, some clubs in Europe launder players through. And so the Rangers board currently has good intentions. You can then start to question the ability, and only time will tell about whether they do a good job. I'd say they're better. Absolutely, I would say they're better than Murray, because they won't take the risks that he did, for better or for worse. They won't take the risks. And we can't really afford someone who is, as I say, addicted to gambling, because the problem with someone like that is they only need to get it wrong once. And Murray's enormous, big, crushing F-up was obviously the EBTs, whereas I think other, you can get 99 out of 100 gambles right, and if one goes wrong and it's a big one or the wrong one, then there's no comeback from it. After the abuse I got, by the way, in the last Q&A for drinking limeade, I have switched to Vimto, so I hope that's a bit stauncher. The Rangers family, all of it. The Rangers family asks, hi David, I hope you take this question during the international break. My question is, Are you a Rangers supporter? They might be on to me now. No, this has been a long-term, deep undercover, and wait till you see the expose that I'm going to do for this. It's going to, honestly, it's going to make Mark Daly look like Alan Partridge when I'm done. But I mean, I think I've convinced a lot of people, but well done for being on to me. But yeah, wasn't that brilliant? Are you a Rangers supporter? Just shows you mentality. You can have all the money in the world. You can have a moustache that resembles, a late 19th century, early 20th century overlord of a country, and you still clutch at that straw when you're in trouble. What an absolute fud cake. RFC Amsterdamer, have you ever been literally brought to tears of joy, sadness during your time supporting the club? Etihad pre-UEFA final for me. The nearest I ever got was that moment when the teams came out the tunnel, and I did well up at that one. But apart from that, no, not really, because I don't really cry when I'm happy. I've never been a tears of joy guy. But and when we lose, generally speaking, I don't get sad, I get angry. And I think that's very much a Rangers thing, that we don't tend to start feeling sorry for ourselves or to, look to go, oh, it's a sin or everyone's against us. We tend to get angry, and at our own team, if they have fucked up, we will say, this is your fault. And we also, I think, if it was a referee fine, we can blame. Very, rarely do we do that. We might say that the referee had an influence, but if we are to blame for losing a match, we will blame our own. We don't look for external excuses. And I really, really despise these arseholes at football matches who cry. It's just a desperate attempt to get on the television after their team loses, and all it is porn for the. It's just fodder for the opposition fan. If you've lost a football match, you're crying, and also get a grip, But yeah, I would say that pre-UEFA when they came on at the park, when I got in and I saw it, and they had the huge, the banners, the kind of what do you call them? Airships, but you know what I mean? The kind of floating banner things, blimps. That's what you call them. No dingwall joke coming there, but. I saw that, and then the team's warming up, and you realised that because it was a beautiful sunny night, and growing up where you would watch the kind of the European Cup finals at the end of the season, and they would generally be glorious sunny nights and spectacular, and to see Rangers involved in one of these and realise the whole football world is watching this match, that was pretty close. And also I was very drunk, so I mean that obviously helped. Deej, apart from Messi, we have an open chequebook for a Bosman contract in January. Who would you take? Well, apart from the top two, obviously, and there is that gap, Messi and Ronaldo, I think Dan Egan would be the obvious one, because he's a proven track record of arriving in January and delivering trophies to Rangers. So if Dan is available, he would be the one I would look at. Failing that, if Dan isn't available, the one I would probably go for is Mauro Icardi. From Inter Milan, who I love, and there are better players in the world, absolutely extend that, but he is up there, and he fantastic goal scorer, nutter as well, which I think helps. You always have to admire that, a genuine proper head case, of which the Italians are, I think, the undisputed man. Maybe South Americans, because more countries there, obviously, but in European terms, for proper football nutcases, I think that Italy are hard to beat. But Icardi's got the lot. Good in the air, great movement, great touch, holds the ball up well, brings others into play, deadly finisher, and that cocky, we would call it gallus streak, and I really admire that. So he would be my one. And also he's gorgeous. I mean, honestly, you would love him. Bruce Burns, hi David, I've listened to the pod since the beginning, thank you, and distinctly remember you threatening to stop production of the show towards the end of every season, but recently it seems H&H has gone from strength to strength. What changed? Threatening makes it sound as though I was doing it for that. I never was. I always ran out of steam, because at the time when we were doing it, I was working full time, and you had to do it and organise it. And when we first started it in particular, the recording of it was such a laborious process, just because of the technology that was available at the time to do it, that it was such a pain in the hole. And I mean, you physically had to get everybody together to do it, and then so you had to allot the time. You had to arrive at the time when we first started. It was at our producer's house, producer Chris, and you would turn up there, and we would have to make your notes through the day, do the pod. I would then go home and have to edit it, and again at the time the software wasn't great for doing that, and I wasn't obviously as experienced at doing it. So you would then do that, it would then get uploaded. It took a day. It genuinely did take, in terms of man hours, it took a day to do it. And I just got, at the end of every year I was knackered, and I would just go, that'll be me, that'll be me done now. And on top of that was coming off the trust. If something's supposed to be fun and it isn't fun, then why would you do it? And that's been my approach to absolutely everything in life, including marriages. And I think that there were times where it was just such a dream. But then I became really quite ill a couple of years ago, and the pod took what turned out to be a kind of 3-month hiatus that was unexpected. And during that time, as I recovered, I began to miss it, and I sort of realised, well, I do enjoy doing that, and when we're doing it in a way that's fun, and I sort of changed the way that we delivered it in terms of the way we recorded it, and you guys were a huge help because you crowdfunded. We did a crowdfunding for new equipment, and you guys stepped up, and we were able to buy new equipment, and now the whole process is compressed, and of course advances in technology. Things move so quickly now that even in the short lifespan of the pod, which is 7 years, which in real terms is nothing, but we are able to do it so much more quickly now, and I think we're getting good at it. It's taken a long time, but I think we're beginning to know what we're doing. As for this year, in March this year, I took voluntary redundancy from the job that I had. My wife, she had run her own business for a couple of years and got it to it's in a good place now, but she wanted to go back to what she does for a living, which is management consultancy. So obviously that then, because I'm married well, management consultant, and she then said, well, if you want to go in and try and push the pod up a level, because I'd spoken about it for years, but I just genuinely did not have the time, and now I have the time to do it as part of being a kind of full-time doggy daddy and her business Dog's Body. But it means that the ideas that I have, instead of just going, I'd love to do that, but, and then just, because you fall back into doing what you've always done. So, I've got this idea for a pod, or, I can just do what I know will work. It'll be 40 minutes, I'll batter through it, boom. And we've been able to do more, we've been able to do more episodes, we've been able to do more ideas, and it's just because I've got more time to do it. So that's the plan, and not giving anything away. The next step for the pod is going to be to try and enable me to do it long term, and I'll be quite honest about that. Because obviously there may come a time where financially I would have to go back to maybe doing full-time work. That what we're going to do is move the pod to a subscription service. Now, don't panic. The Monday and the Friday pods are free and always will be. I am not going to change that. If anybody wants to sponsor them, by the way, that would help. You may have heard we had some trouble earlier in the season there. So if anyone wishes to put some cash into the pod that way, that would be handy. But for those of you who do want, and the reason there are thousands of you listening to this who will go, I wouldn't want any more podcasts from you than I already get, and that's cool. But I know that me personally, and certain people have asked me, I subscribe to certain podcast companies where you pay a nominal fee and then you get a daily pod and various different content, and that's what we're going to do, and it's going to cost $1.99 a month, and you will then get daily pod updates. You'll get shows about the history of Rangers, you'll get look backs at specific matches, you'll get sort of live commentaries of old matches, you'll get loads and loads and loads of different things, and you won't have to listen to it all, obviously, but you'll have the option to. So it's not uncommon. I know that the Terrace podcast do it on Patreon or Patreon. I don't quite know how you pronounce it, but my apologies there for my lack of French ability. But you'll have that option, and like I say, it'll be $1.99 a month, and for that you'll get, I would say on average, maybe another 20-25 hours of content per month. Entirely up to you if you want to go for it. The more of you who do it, then the more time that gives me to do it, the more budget it gives me to do it. So in terms of, like, at the moment we can't pay for interviews, but if we could, that would obviously help things, or if I could travel to do that sort of thing. So there you go, that's something that's coming soon. And if you can support it, please do. But if you don't want to and you're quite happy with the 2 pods, I promise, you have my word, they will not change. You will get your Monday/Tuesday and your Friday podcast for free forever. As I say, that's the plan anyway. So that's what changed. Briggs Bear, 2 from me. Best 3 games you've been to and any funny stories from meeting players or managers on your time with the RST. Okay, with best 3, I mean, that's really, really, really difficult. So I'm just going to go with the first 3 that come to mind. And you could ask me another day and it would be a different day. 7-0 against Hibs, Christmas 95, going into 96. The day Gaza got booked. It was just brilliant because we played fantastic. It was freezing. It was really, really stupidly cold. And we were exceptional that day, and it was just, you know, tremendous. And Jim Leighton was in goal for them, so and he genuinely came off with a 1,000-yard stare, and it was fantastic to know that we'd done that to him. Next one would then be 2003 Dunfermline 6-1, the first helicopter Sunday, for fairly obvious reasons. And then the third one would be Brechin, which was the first game after the white and juice summer in 2012. Just, it was so surreal and it was so odd, and there were such great moments of humour at the game. And I just thought, you know what, we're going to be all right somehow, because it was still all up in the air. And I just thought, yeah, somehow we'll get through this because of us. You know, not because the guys on the pitch or the guys in the side or whatever, but somehow we'll get us through this. And we did, and it was just feeling a part of that, and the strength of it, of the support and the humour and the feelings. And that day it had everything. It was a 4 seasons in one day Scottish day. There was sunshine, it pissed with rain, there were howling winds. I remember hail at one point, and yeah, it was just it was a tremendous experience to be there, and as I say, to feel part of that group. And I knew that we could not and would not let this die, and somehow, don't matter how long, we would dig it out. And that's why I know that there'll be a 55, because we'll make it happen. Just through sheer bloody mindedness, we will make it happen, and we'll keep going until it's done. Any funny stories from meeting players or managers on your time with the RST? I think I've spoken about quite a lot of them, but I remember one time it was at a Football Writers Player of the Year dinner. I spoke about this before. The one where Walter terrified Craig Levine, and I'm walking past the Rangers table, and Ali McCoist's there, and I'm walking past him, and he was Rangers assistant manager at the time, and I sort of looked at him, and you know that way that you catch somebody's eye, and I went, "All right, Ali," and he went, "All right, David." And I went, I'm a Cosmos, who I am. I swear to God, I had to go to the toilet and just hit my hard on with a spoon until it went down. So that's one that I treasure with me, and probably why I was far too loyal to Ali in his management days, because I couldn't see past him. And even now, and I know all the stuff, and I know all the arguments, and they're all correct, and you know the finances and stuff, and he didn't vote and all the rest of it. But you know, he's still Ali. If he came round, I'd still let him have a go on the wife. I admit it. David Young. With opposition teams continually coming to Ibrox looking to waste time, break up momentum, spoil the game for the first minute, do you think we'd benefit from introducing a multi-ball system? Yes, I do. I think it's common sense. Don't understand why you wouldn't do it. Although there is, of course, the legendary Rangers ball boys are crap. I've never known a crowd who abuse their ball boys more than we do. I remember one particular little lad who was referred to throughout an entire game by an older gentleman next to me, as a fat wee ninja turtle bastard, which I didn't quite, get the significance of, but he certainly said it loudly and aggressively, and he was a lazy little bastard. And you do wonder, if I was a ball boy at Ibrox, even at my age, I'd get there as quickly as I could, and they just ambled at kids. See, you people insist on having them, and I blame you for our shit ball boys, or you parents out there. Take your kids out, on listening to this, pause this podcast, go out the back garden, kick a ball for miles and make them get it. and then time them to make sure they're getting quicker, and if not, beat them and send them to bed while it's still legal to do so in Scotland. So a wee bit of advice on training the future ball boys at Ibrox. Brian McCulloch, briefly, I'm not good at that, mate. Briefly, what are your thoughts on Mols? For me, but for the injury, we would have been vastly more successful, especially in Europe. He had the X factor, and in my opinion, could have been a par with Larsson for us. We have a terrible tendency to romanticise the past, and you only need to look at sometimes when people say RFC legend, and it's Rangers fans doing this, or Legends nights, and there are guys being, and you're like, really, legend? And it's because we tend to look back on things through blue-tinted spectacles, which I do understand, especially given our travails of the last few years, because it's a psychological link to happier times. There's nothing particularly unique to us about it. Everybody does it. I always slag Scott, because Scott's a great believer in, things were better 100 years ago. You had a sense of community. It's all romantic bollocks. It's like Scott 100 years ago with people dying from the flu, for fuck's sake. But I understand why people do it, because it's easier to look back to a time and romantically say, oh yeah, wasn't it great then? In Mols' case, I actually think that we underrate what he could have been, because that period, that opening period, was so good. And go back and watch it, go back and look at it week by week. The goals he was scoring, the things he was doing, and the consistency of it was Laudrup-esque, and I cannot pay him a bigger compliment than that. And there was no because he seemed to be growing week by week, and there's no reason to believe that had he kept going uninjured, that he would have just continued to develop. And Larsson's a one where is a good comparison, because you develop that reputation that then makes it easier for you to score goals. And by the way, I'm not saying it was easy for Larsson, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that for a top player, defenders are on the edge more than they are, and people who are on edge make mistakes. It's basic psychology, and knowing that person is in behind you panics you or makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do. And Mols could have got to that level. He became still after the injury, he was a perfectly serviceable centre forward. He was good, and I think that shows you that the level of natural ability the guy had. But he was great before it, and I think could have got better, despite being 29. And it still staggers me. How the hell did that guy get to 29 years of age before being noticed? Because he was so good. He really was sensational. And yeah, an utter tragedy that happened to him, and then that it wasn't just an injury he could get over, that it was one that did effectively... It didn't end his career, and he went on, he won medals for us, and he did well for us, but it ended, I think, his ability to be truly up there in the kind of top 5 of Rangers players of all time, and that was a real shame. And I suppose now, though, you just go back, watch those first 3 months and enjoy it, because he was a sensational footballer. Who's your Rangers cult hero, a player you love that others don't often mention? Dan Egan. And apart from that, Stuart Monroe, who was, when I'm first getting into Rangers, was in the team, and I just thought he was really... I was young, remember. I just thought he was really, really cool. Looking back now, the blonde highlights, not so much, but he was solid, dependable, and yeah, Stuart Monroe. That's my Rangers cult hero, and things were better when we had Stuart Monroe in that Rangers team. That's just a fact. Andy says, can you tell us a bit more about Calgary next year? What you have planned, how it came about, that sort of thing. Thanks. Yes, so for those of you who don't know, I am a convention partner next year at NARSA 2018. Where I will be, one of the main thing that I have planned is a live podcast, which will be recorded. We don't normally record the live podcast, and will go out. And depending on whether or not it's technologically possible, we'll look at even streaming it live if possible. But how much is libel in Canada something I can get sued for over here? Can I get lifted for things I say in Canada over? I'll need to look into that in terms of streaming with a delay, perhaps. But I'll also be doing other things at the event, such as interviews with the ex-players or officials, interviews and chats and sort of mini sessions with guys from the RSCs and from NARSA, etc. And just talking to punters, and I'll be doing little shows with punters will be invited to come along, and we'll record it and build up a big bag that'll be released when I get back. As well. How did it come about? The guys who organised it this year are the RSC from Calgary, and they invited me, and I've never been to NARSA. I'd like to go to one, obviously, but with the best will in the world, that I don't drink now, so big social events maybe don't always have the same allure for me as they maybe would have had done 10 years ago. On the plus, I'm not going to make an arse of myself at it either, so that helps, but to be going to it and also working, in quotes, I think is really ideal for me. Is absolutely perfect. So to be going there rather than just be kind of sitting about, which I'm sure I would enjoy, but to be able to go there and have things to do and have to justify my being there. That's a big thing. I want people to come away from that podcast thinking, I'm glad they got him to come. So I'll be working my butt off while I'm there, and hopefully the people who go there will enjoy it, and then people who hear the content afterwards will enjoy it. And come along, by all means, if you come along to NARSA, please do. I'm told it's a fantastic experience normally, and I can only assume that if it's a fantastic experience normally, well, when I'm there, Jesus, I mean, it's going to be the can't miss one, isn't it? You're going to regret not going to it. So if you go to their website, you'll find out the details, how to book and how to get on. And if you do, and you're a listener to the pod, please come over and say hello. And I'll probably, bring out the recorder and chat away to you, so you might end up being on the show. So that's something to consider. Alan Thompson, what have been your best 3 and worst 3 kits of all time from Rangers? My number 1 is the UEFA Cup final shirt. Well, the top one is the CR Smith 84 to 87-1. Best Rangers kit of all time. Second, I would have the one after that, the McCune's Lager kit. The Ray Wilkins against Celtic 5-1 kit, and third I would have the one before that, which was the blue one with the pinstripes, so you spot the 80s kid. And I would also honourable mention to the white version of it, because I loved, and I still do, and I think it's, all men are 30% autistic, and I love symmetry, and I loved that kit, the pinstripe one. You had a blue pinstripe one for a home kit and a white, totally reversed pinstripe kit for the away one. And that's what kits should be. You should have your home kit and the away kit should be the same kit but reversed in colours or in different colours. That's the way football should be and will be when I'm in charge. And I make no apologies for that. All these fancy away kits. Kits that I haven't liked. An interesting one I really disliked. There was one, an away kit in 1995-96, which was a kind of Harlequin one that was red and white, made by Adidas, and a big black badge on it that looked uncomfortable, and then it had McCune's Lager right across the centre, but they just put a patch on over it rather than work it through the material, which would have been more expensive. And I didn't really like it. And Liverpool had the same kit in green and white, funnily enough, and and again they had the same thing with the sponsor just plastered across it, and it didn't look good, even though it was an Adidas kit. And Adidas usually do decent kits, but I didn't really like that one. But an interesting thing is they decided to make those kits, but that Rangers one in particular, Adidas subcontracted it out to a textile firm, and this textile firm my dad worked for, and the factory for it was in Kilwinning. So they decided, to make Rangers kits in Kilwinning. Well, there were, I would suggest, there were people going into that factory in the morning a size, small, and coming out at night a size XXL, with the amount of kits that they had on under their top. And everybody in Kilwinning 2 weeks later was running about in this Rangers top that wasn't due out for about another 8 weeks. So God knows how many. Adidas might have recorded selling 100,000, but trust me, they made 250,000 of these things. But just what a fantastic idea! We're going to make Rangers kits in Kilwinning in an easily broken into factory. It was fantastic that everybody in Kilwinning, you would walk into the Victoria pub and there would be like 45 people drinking, and 43 of them would have on a Rangers kit, and the other 2 would have on the Liverpool one. Even though it was green and white, it was free, and that did trump. That did trump the thing. So yeah, some of that in Kilwinning. I didn't like that one. Other 2, really didn't like the one, the first NTL one, if you remember, where it was like every kit is slightly different, and it was the 2003 kit. I really didn't like that, the kind of Arteta kit. I thought it looked like a Falkirk top. Didn't like that at all. And then we've had some horrors under Puma, but I would say the worst one was that daft one with the wee buttons that didn't button anything on the collar, which would be the first championship season. So there'd be my 3 worst one. Greg Cunningham. Hi David, great pod. Like that, Steve Wright-esque. Good way to get a question asked. Do you feel your changing relationship with alcohol has augmented your love of Rangers football? Oh wow, fuck, that's one. Do I feel... If you drank the way that I drank, this is going to get a little bit kind of Maury Povich, so I apologise for that in advance, but my entire life was sort of based around getting fucked up, and everything I did was towards that end. So getting a job was to get money to get drunk. Being in a relationship was cool, but it was still about great, I can go out and socialise. So it was always about that. That's what my life my life was like, and that's cool. That's who I was. And I would say that certainly football does play into that, because it's a great social occasion. It's an excuse to go to the pub on match days. It's an excuse to go to the pub to watch a match through the week when it's on TV, especially Club at Rangers where it's always on. And it goes together with it, and in Scotland in particular, it's such a good social excuse. Why are you in this state? I was at the game, and that should cover it. There were times where it was against my interest in football, because there'd be times I'd be at the game, I couldn't remember what had happened. I remember one game I went into, and I used to drink in the Neptune before the game and various other things, and I was just so drunk. Really just barely able to talk, and I won the raffle in the Neptune, which was I was second in the raffle, and I won a half bottle of vodka. And I decided what I would do I'd smuggle it in, but I would then buy a Diet Coke, tip some of it out, pour this half bottle of vodka in, and then go into the game. And I thought that this would be a cracking idea. So I did that, and then I was drinking it, through the game. And I was sitting on my own at the time, thankfully. And I was sitting on my own in the Govan rear, and I was holding this plastic cup full of Diet Coke and vodka. And I must have squeezed the cup a bit too hard, and it just all shot out in this torrent all over this woman in front of me. And she was quite upset about this, and I decided in my sort of alcoholic haze that I would dry her by patting her hair down. If anything, though, this just seemed to make her more upset. So I tried to apologise, but I couldn't speak, so I sort of ran off, and I thought, I know, and I went into one of the toilets and closed the door. I went into one of the cubicles and had a cry. So I do cry at the football sometimes, and fell asleep, and then I woke up about 50 minutes later when everybody came in for half time, and then just got up and went back to the pub. So it's not healthy from that point of view. And then when I sobered up, and I mean full time, and decided not to drink or to take any substances anymore. Because that was another thing. I would go out for a game on a Wednesday night, and due to being supercharged, literally get back home on the Friday. And since then, my relationship with football has been a lot calmer, and I enjoy it more. And believe it or not, people say, "Oh, you must need a drink." When you're like, "Nah." I mean, sometimes when things are bad with Rangers, the last thing I need would be to tack a drink onto that one. But I enjoy actually the sport and the game more. I've always been a football nerd now, but but now especially, I really do enjoy just watching the game. And different to Rangers. I mean, Rangers is my team, and I watch it in a different way. But just sport from or football from other countries that I do enjoy just watching. And I mean, I think I'm a better fan now in that I stay for the whole game and I don't need to get up for a piss every 5 minutes. So I think I'm a better fan in the sense that I'm less annoying than that. But what I will say is that when I was drinking and when I was doing other things, I think that was very important through the trust, because it gave me that sense. I was in my 20s. I was supercharged. I didn't think anyone could stop me. And I think that was important, that I just thought, I can take on the world here. And all joking aside, one thing about booze or other things or me or whatever, it's never dulled or dimmed my love for Rangers. I love Rangers as much now as I did when I was first introduced to it when I was 5, and it's never changed, and it grows. If anything, it gets more, and it gets stronger, and it gets bigger every year. But I think that during that time, and a lot of it's to do with my personal, you try and attach yourself to a cause, and there was such passion involved in it, which is obviously exacerbated when you're in certain states, that was important. And I think that it did help me at times in terms of having a thick skin, or the ability to do stuff that maybe I wouldn't. And you know what it's like when you're in your 20s, and as you get older and you get a bit calmer and a bit more reflective, I'd like to think that the passion is still there, but I maybe can channel it a little better than I did back then, and maybe a wee bit more helpfully. And maybe if I had been able to think a bit clearer at times, then I think that maybe I would have made better decisions when it came to stuff that I did for the trust. But again, a lot of that was to do with age and immaturity as much as anything else, I think. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's who I am, and it played a part in my life, and now it doesn't. And so hopefully, you're still listening after all that to the next question. But the one thing I can promise you guys is that we're honest, and that I'm honest on here. So if somebody asks me a question, you'll get the honest answer. You don't get the what I would like you to hear answer. That's the one thing I can always promise you, is that everything you hear on this show comes from the heart, and that will never change. George Gilmer from the Rangers strikers you have seen play live, which attributes would you piece together for them to create the ultimate striker? Well, that's a good one. Negri's movement, Ali's instinct and knowing where to be at any given point, Moll's touch, I think would be one. Hateley's physical strength and attitude towards the opposition defenders. Jelovic's ability to take it early. Jelovic's ability to react almost while everyone's thinking about what he's going to do. I thought he was terrific at that, of just doing things off the cuff and on instinct, and with a first time finish, whereas maybe other people would have looked for a second one. And Rod Wallace's work rate, because there was a guy who just would not stop, and I think if you put all of that together, you would have one hell of a player. Stephen Harrigan, what was such an uber staunch man like yourself doing at Titanic in the first place? A lot of people from a certain place drowned. I thought that was obvious. And when's the last time you cried at a movie? Oh God, I'm not really a huge movie watcher, believe it or not. I'm more of a box set guy, and I think that I find films difficult to watch now, because what can you do in 2 hours that is going to be satisfying as something you can do in a well-told story over 10? Oh Christ, years and years and years and years and years ago, probably going back to Shawshank Redemption, end of the Shawshank Redemption. I cried. I remember that. I also cried at the end of Lord of the Rings, but that's because, as previously touched on, I I like to drink, and it would not fucking end no matter how. Jesus Christ, my wife wanted to go, and at one point I did stand up, and it was in the Odeon in Renfield Street, and it's still there. I actually just stood up at one point and shouted, "Will this end?" Because it was, I mean, for Christ, what a terrible, terrible, homosexual midgets walking about with a bit of fucking jewellery that they need to chuck into a mountain. That best said by Randall and Clerks 2. That movie's so fucking boring. Even the trees are trying to run away in it. But that was for totally different reasons. Rob McEachran, you can have any one player from our history, excluding Hall of Famers, to come in and improve our team right now. Who would it be and why? Whoa, excluding Hall of Famers is a tough one, because especially lately we put everybody into the Hall of Fame. I think if you manage a few games that you go in, and therefore a player that would make a real difference to the team to come in, I think would be difficult. But I'll probably say Rod Wallace. I don't think Rod Wallace is in the Hall of Fame, and apologies if he is, but if not, then yeah, Rod Wallace would do a good job for us at the moment. Stuart Philpott, with your dad being Northern Irish, will you support them at the World Cup? Fuck yes, of course. Support Northern Ireland when they're playing any match, because I know how happy it makes my old man. As I say, I don't really follow international football particularly closely, but I watch the big NI games with him, and as I say, I know how happy my cousin's a journalist in Northern Ireland, and he follows them all over the place, and I know he had one hell of a good summer there. So yes, absolutely, come on our wee country, get it done. Cameron Bell, how did this get slit? I'm going to have a word with the secretary. Surely we should just bite the bullet and get Malky Mackay to replace Scott Hart and Hand. Cammy, I don't really think we need any more fat racists. We seem covered in that department. Graham Robb, David, what did you do for a living? Any life lessons from balancing a career and a passion from RFC? Yes, if you want to advance in your career, it's probably not best to be known as the kind of face of the Rangers support for a while. And even, as I say, a double X level, or double X list celebrity, or double Z list, double X, that's no. Obviously thinking about something else. Double Z-list celebrity can be detrimental to it, because it can be quite awkward where you're going into, especially in a client-facing business as I had, when clients in Scotland obviously may have been born wrong and support a different team, and you've been on the telly the night before or on the radio the night before criticising their very existence. So there's a piece of advice. What did I do before? I worked for I did a degree at uni in English and modern history because I was good at it, but a degree in the arts is, to be honest, as much use in terms of a job as conceptual fucking tap dancing. So I thought, well, I need to do something, and I fell into recruitment consultancy, which I hated from the minute I got into it, but I was good at it, and you could make a lot of money at it. I did it for 10 years, and I literally hated every day in it. But I made a lot of money, which was good, because I spent a lot of money at the time due to the previously discussed lifestyle. And when everything, basically my life exploded one summer, deservedly, and that's when, I stopped drinking, got divorced, found a new place to live, all that kind of thing. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't do another 30 years of this. And I'd always been interested in web, because I'd worked for a well-known recruitment website, and I'd got interested in the technical side of it, and from that I decided I'm going to change careers, take a drop in money to start off with, and that's what I did. And I worked in web publishing, got to know HTML, web publishing, web content development, all those sort of things. And then I moved into social media, digital marketing, so making content, video, podcasts, content for websites and for social programs, and that's kind of what I did and / do. So if you need any help with that, if anyone wants any help promoting their business or whatever, very, very reasonable rates. I was a contractor for many organisations. I can sort that sort of thing out. If you just get in touch, and I'll do my best for you. Time for business, and for having asked the question, I suppose I owe Graham a bit of tenor. But I remember when I was working for one particular recruitment company, a certain chairman of a certain football club got in touch with them to say, shut that prick up, I'm getting annoyed with him. And my boss called me in and said, he's a very powerful man, David. And I'm like, well, yeah. And they were like, well, you can't really be going about saying this. And I said, well, we have a problem then, because I can't not say it. And they said, well, and I said, well, it's like this. If you fire me because David Murray has essentially told you to do so, or he won't give you any business, then I'll sue you, I'll sue him, and I'll be all over the media talking about it. And of course they backed down, but it does harm your chances for promotion. So if you're going to do it in a far more clever way than I did it, would be my advice. Al Bundy Loyal, if you'd been a decent player as a youth, I'll have you know that I was. Again, just discovered beer when I was 14. Would you have signed for them if they came sniffing around your Dewey of Morals? No, I wouldn't have. And it's easy for me to say, and I absolutely understand it, and anyone listening to this goes, oh, it's easy for you to say, you are correct. For the simple reason being that it is very, very easy to sit here as someone who was never capable of playing at that level to say what would happen. But that's who I am. I was never a footballer who had those opportunities, and therefore, as a fan, I can say hand on heart that I would, honest to God, I would rather put my willy in a blender than my signature on a Celtic contract. So I'm sure they wouldn't have wanted to have me either. So it works out well. Although that team they had back then in the early 90s, I probably could have got a game for while I was at school and half cut. But no, and to prove, or in other words, to show you that I'm not totally hypocritical about it, my dad takes my nephew to football. My nephew's 9, the goalkeeper. And he said there was a scout from Celtic down tonight, and I swear to God, I just froze on the spot, and I looked at him. And he went, no, don't worry. I'm like, you can't take him to that training if there's going to be scouts from Celtic. It can't happen. He's a goalkeeper, and I'm going to have to injure his hand, and I don't want to have to do that if that comes to pass. I mean, it genuinely filled me with horror when that happened. So yeah, not for me. Ross Manson, Jose or Pep at Rangers. Thanks for that, Ross. I wouldn't have known that's what you meant otherwise. I was a huge Mourinho fan for years, but he's kind of, that walking about with a face like a slapped fanny the last couple of years has kind of put me off. It's like, you're in a great job, you're in the job you always wanted, just have a Diet Coke and a smile and fuck up. And Pep at least seems to have a bit of verve to him, and the football he plays is magnificent, so I would go with Pep now. Although, as I say, I did really strongly admire Mourinho for years, and foolish to write him off at this point, but his attitude the last few years, I think he's going through the male menopause, to be honest. Stu, why are you so good? Oh, I don't know, just wonderful mix of charm, cockiness and looks, I suppose. Good parent, that's the reason. Anything that I've got, because I'm a lazy bastard, so anything that I have is natural. It was given to me, it's instinctive. Anything that, so if any of you are listening to this and you think, oh, David's good at that show, then it comes from my parents, because I've never worked on anything in my life. Neil, are you concerned by the apparent lack of succession planning since Progress? Should that not have been the DOF first task? Yeah, that's a legitimate point. They might not have known when Pedro was going to be fired, but they had to have been thinking for a while that he might be. And you would have thought that there would be plans in place to be ready to go. And we may find out by the time this pod comes out. You never know that the reason for the delay was X. But yeah, I do find that a little odd, and I don't know exactly what the DOF's duties are, and I suppose only the club do, so who knows, it may not have been top of his priorities list. And I do know the way that things run at Ibrox is decisions of that magnitude are taken by one man. That's not to say that Dave King walks in and says this is who the new manager is. He might be given a list, but the person who will decide who the new Rangers manager is Dave King. He may do it off a list that Mark Allen comes up with, he may do it off a list that Stuart Robertson comes up with, but at the end of the day, neither Robertson nor Allen can appoint a Rangers manager. One guy can, and you would have thought, yes, that there was planning in place, and there may have been, for all we know, because certainly Dave King is known at Ibrox for maybe not rushing to a decision. I think that's the way the guy is. He likes to weigh up everything and then go with what he feels is the right decision. So for all we know, a list was plunked down on his desk the day after, and he's made the decision from there on in, or he's currently making the decision. I don't know, or they could be waiting for someone. So time will tell. It's a little unfair, but you would have hoped that yes, there would have been succession planning in place. There always should be. You should always have names on a list. I mean, Arsenal have got names on a list. They'll never frigging go to it, but they have a list. Although it gets updated a lot because it's been so long. I think some of the up and coming young names on it are like A.D. Boothroyd, Alex McLeish, after having had a good season at Rangers, So, but yeah, you should always have that in place. Any business. Scott, he says, this is not our Scott, Scotia 80. What's your favourite Teenage Fan Club album? Songs from Northern Britain. My favourite Teenage Fan Club album. Funnily enough, I met my former brother-in-law, who was one of them. He was a huge Teenage Fan Club fan, as was my ex-wife, and we used to go to all their gigs in Glasgow. I think I've seen the Fannies about 20 times. And they played the Garage one night, and then after it, Jerry from the band was upstairs and he was drinking on his own. And my brother-in-law was a bit starstruck and blootered, so I wandered over. I was like, my brother, I love you guys, can you sign this? He was really cool. But he, funnily enough, said to me, he said, are you that guy from the Rangers Trust? I was like, oh, fuck. Aye. And he just wanted to talk about football, and it was really funny because me and him are talking away about Fitbit, and my brother-in-law wanted to talk about amps, what guitar did she use on that song. And Jerry was a phenomenally nice man, and he was just yapping away about football. He was just a really good guy. And he's my favourite of the four when it comes to writing. Although I've interviewed Norman when I used to run a music blog, and he was a really cool guy as well. Gary Percival, I know it was inevitable. What's your thoughts on Ryan Jack being booed by his own support? This should have been one of the proudest moments of his career, yet it's overshadowed because the Tartan Army, along with all supporters of Scottish clubs, hate our club. If you believe, this is difficult because this is where politics start to intrude onto Scottish football, and things like independence and whatnot start to impinge. And within the Tartan Army, I don't think it's unfair to say there's a large preponderance of the people who are in the Tartan Army who are pro-independence, which is perfectly fine. But because of that, we are set up, as we're clearly a club where a large element of our support are not, we are set up as a sort of bogeyman. And a large part of the independence movement is the idea of Scottish exceptionalism. And you hear that a lot from, we're not like the English, we don't vote Tory, is one of the things that they say, we're more caring. If you believe in that, and if you believe in Scottish exceptionalism, if you're a patriotic Scot, if you believe in any sort of nationalism, even benign nationalism, where you are just a fan of your country and you think that you are good, then you believe in a strain of exceptionalism. That's what you do. We do it as fans. I believe that Rangers fans are better fans than other people, than other supporters. That's exceptionalism at work. You then completely fuck up your ability to play that card that we are more caring, that we are better, when you exclude people from your society, or in this case from your group. And that's what the Tartan Army do with Rangers supporters, and that's what they did last night with Ryan Jack, where they said, we don't want you. An element of the Tartan Army, I'm being unfair because there were people booing, but there were people applauding, so I am being unfair. So for any Rangers supporters or Tartan Army members there, I apologise. I misspoke, as Bill Clinton would say. But to the people who do the booing and who think that way and who don't want anything to do with Rangers, then yes, you are completely pissing on your point of that you are different from other people and somehow better, and that the Tartan Army are somehow better when you do exclusion of anyone based on anything, whether it's based on race, religion, or the idea of who they play for. And there is a religious element built in with the Rangers thing, and let's not pretend or kid ourselves that that's not the case. So it's embarrassing, it's shameful, and it's pathetic, and the people involved in it are not only pretty much kind of dregs of the earth humans, but they're also lowest common denominator scum bigots, and it's as simple as that. If you hate people because of any reason that's other than they're murderers or paedophiles, right, legitimate reasons, if you hate them for or rapists, whatever, terrible people who've done terrible things, if you genuinely hate people because they play for a different football team, then you're a scumbag. If you hate people genuinely because, and you can't put it aside when you're supposed to be coming together, you're a scumbag. Rangers fans in the Tartan Army cheer when Lee Griffiths scores. They can dislike him during the 90 minutes of a football match, but they put it aside because they've got a bit of class. And if you can't do it, you completely destroy, as I say, your own point of the "was like us" argument. So that's my take on it. Chris says, Forza Rangers, I love the replacements. How come Husker Du's reverb middens leave me cold? Because you need to have your ears waxed. Husker Du are great. The replacements are, I would say, slightly better, but Husker Du are magnificent. And there's plenty of tunes in there as well. Listen to Warehouse Songs and Stories. I agree the production is a bit dated, but it's still a great album. Okay. Craig, with the departure of Pedro, what do you feel is the future for his signings as Rangers players, particularly matching Portuguese contingent? Will they leave come January? Personally hope Candea stays. There's absolutely no reason at all Candea should be going. He's doing well and the fans love him. So I wouldn't, I'd be very surprised if he wanted to go simply because it was a change of manager, because that happens all over the world. The Mexican boys, I don't think have settled particularly well and may wish, Glasgow in the winter when you're not enjoying yourself, or Mexico, I could kind of see if a loan deal was available why it might appeal to all parties. Blue Coat Neil, what happened with Matt Mackay? Why did he not feature much? And why has the LM been such a problem for us in recent years? Well, there are less, obviously there are less left-sided players available. You've got a smaller, a smaller pool that you're sort of looking in, and then again, when you then come to our level of league, the pool is even smaller. So you may struggle to find someone who's significantly good. And you're right, it is a problem for us, but it's a problem for England for years. Remember, they used to try and play Paul Scholes out there. It was they just couldn't get a good left-sided player. Mackay was right. I just don't think he got a chance. Ali, for whatever reason, didn't fancy him, and we can't say whether he would have been good, bad, or indifferent. Certainly, some of the players that were used, you would have thought that he was worth a go, but yeah, he never. Saw him once, Ibrox, that I remember. He maybe played more, and I thought he did all right, but never seen or heard from him again. He was small, and I wonder if that Ali, being a bit of a traditionalist that way, maybe he's too wee for this league. Mr. MacT, is there a better live album in existence than the Ramones' It's Alive? No, there isn't, but Stand in the Fire by Warren Zevon is up there. Simon, what were you laughing at 20 years ago this week? The Montreal Screwjob, Brett screwed Brett. And who do you think the managerial appointment process is taking longer than it really should be? Again, the only thing I can think of is that the two criteria is they're waiting for someone for whatever reason, or that they're prevaricating over the decision. Grantasan, will Dave King still be involved this time next year? Yes, he will. In what context, I don't know, but it'll be Dave King would need to be removed. So even if Dave King isn't chairman or whatever, then Dave King will still be involved, influence, while the board is in its current incarnation and while power rests with the people that it rests with. So while he may not have an official title, while there may be court-led things or whatever that may change that, he will still have a position at Ibrox. And a wee cue at the end of the pod from Doogie. In your opinion, what's the deadliest item found in the house? This refers to my concussion suffered by being hit in the head by a big bloody brass clock earlier this week. I wouldn't say that's the deadliest item in my house, because she collects all sorts of killable crap, and she's got this French clock that's like 200 years old and apparently worth a fortune, and this thing is massive, and if it fell on me I'd be dead. I mean, it would be dead. But yeah, if you come to my house, we have two. We live in this old we've recently moved to this old townhouse that I think was built late 19th century, early 20th century. And if you go into one room, it looks as though Hercule Poirot will be in the corner with a snifter, and that's Sally's room, and it's all crystal okay. And if you come to my room, it's all signed pictures of Brian Laudrup and Star Wars shit, and a big F-off telly, and so there is a difference in sort of mentality, but you can see the two sides of it in the house. Don't come to the house, so you know my views on that. But yeah, so the other deadliest item in the house is our youngest dog, Daisy, who yesterday I found. Well, I didn't found. I got a phone call from the train station, saying she'd somehow managed to get out through the back garden and walk along the train line without being massacred. So how she managed that, I have no idea, but she's lethal and has a tendency to stand on your nuts at all points. Okay then, folks, I've rabbited on for a while today, and I think that's a combination of so many questions, so many great questions, and I'm sorry that we couldn't get to all of them. And also the fact that I'm quite high on a number of over-the-counter and prescribed drugs, which does lead to me whittering on a bit. And it's the bit at the end of the pod where it's almost become, you could call it a tradition, you could call it a cliche, where I ramble on for a little bit about, how much I love the Gers and how much it matters to me. And on the one hand, there's a little bit of me that's reluctant to do that because there may be an element of it sounding false or contrived. And it's not contrived. Because it's expected doesn't mean it's contrived. But I can understand that maybe after a while people would say, nah, he just does this and it doesn't really mean anything. But it does, because the reason that I do it is at the end of the show I actually feel quite emotional, because you try talking about something you love for an hour or an hour and a bit in this instance, and you'll find that I bet you it leaves you slightly drained and very emotional, and it does for me. And the reason that I do it is that on this show, the words of Rangers family are never more appropriate, because firstly, this is a show that is entirely a guy and his friends talking about something they love to people that are their brothers in arms because they love it too, and because we've such a huge connection to each and every one of you who listen to this show because of that shared interest. This is not that we're all into a hobby that we all like to go to the climbing centre or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just it's such a huge part of our lives that it instantly creates a bond and a relationship between those of us who are on the show and those of you who listen. And that's why we try to communicate with you on social media as often as possible, and we try to get back to everyone who gets in touch with us. That's part of that. Being a Rangers fan is more than following a football club. It's more even than people say things, it's a lifestyle and whatnot. And while there's an element of truth to that, there's more to it than that. It isn't easy, and especially now, it isn't easy, it isn't cool, it isn't trendy. It's not a gang you join because you're gonna get cool points. It's a gang you join because you have to, and by that I mean not that you're forced, but you've got no choice. It's a calling. It's something that you can't put your finger on, and that's maybe why I get a little bit stuttery at the end of these shows, because how do you explain it? It's something that you feel somewhere in your soul that you couldn't put into words, that you couldn't put down on paper accurately, that you couldn't even describe. But the best bit of the community and the family is that you don't have to, and I don't have to. You know what I'm talking about, and you might not be able to put it into words either, but you know what I'm talking about because you can feel it inside. And that's the importance of being a Rangers fan. I spoke about it earlier in that match with Brecon when I knew we were going to be all right. And it's why I know that we are going to be all right and successful, because us, the Rangers support, we will not let it happen. We will not let Rangers fail. We will have days when we get knocked down, but they won't be as bad as ones we've had before. They just won't. They won't be as bad as the Ibrox disaster. They won't be as bad as the day we went into admin. They won't ever be as bad as those days, or the days that the Spivs sat in an island and laughed at us. Everything terrible has happened to us. So that's what our detractors don't get. It's like, you might win the league for 5 years. Fine, we won't win the league for 5 years, but we only need to win it once. That's the thing, to be back to where we belong. And then we're a snowball rolling down a hill. We just pick up momentum. We just pick up new people and new fans and new generations, and we keep going, and we look back the way at the people who've come before us, and we keep looking forward at the people who who are going to try and stop us, and we knock them out of the way one by one. Because we are Rangers supporters, we are fans of the biggest club in the world. We are more than that. We are part of the biggest club in the world. We keep this club great. And as long as we're here, as long as we're together, and as long as we are as one, nothing can stop us. And that's why I know with certainty that we are going to get back to where we belong. And like I say, sometimes in the journey we'll rant, we'll rave, we'll get angry. Sometimes we'll all meet up, be it physically at a ground, be it meet up in podcast land, and we'll chat about it, and we'll be angry, and we'll shout and swear. But we'll pick ourselves up and we'll go again, because we are Rangers supporters. We are the best supporters in the world. We support the greatest institution in the world. Never going to change. And one day, when someone, whoever that captain may be, maybe a guy that's in the squad right now, maybe somebody that's in the reserves right now, maybe somebody that's coming through the ranks right now, I don't know. But one of these days, one of them is going to wave that bit of silver at us, and we're going to turn round and we're going to hug the guy next to us, and we're going to high five the lady next to us, and we're going to say, we fucking did this. We deserve this. We are the people. Thank you very much for listening to me. My name's David Edgar, and I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.